I don't want to give the whole show away. We're going to move on. This is the last thought I had. I had this thought last night. I'm sure I'm not the first one to have this thought. Take a Joe conspiracy guy, whoever it happens to be. When you talk to them about this, you say, so how come, I mean, there must have been at least tens of thousands of people who were in on this. Yeah, that's right. And nobody said a word? No, because if they were going to say something, they'd be killed. Okay. Even test pilots, guys who've got that kind of fear, restrictions, guys that are ready to fly to the moon, guys who, so if they didn't fly to the moon, they were still selected from the armed services. Test pilots, there are test pilots, we can agree on that, right? There are Air Force pilots, right? You're telling me every single one of these guys was so afraid of dying that he spent his life as a test pilot and nevertheless not a single person said anything? Well, they were all afraid they were going to be killed. And here's where you get them. It's like, well, if test pilots who work for NASA and who could really open this case wide open are too scared to talk about what apparently really happened for fear of being killed, then why am I having this conversation with you? Why aren't you dead? If you're telling me that the entire conspiracy hinges on the fact that people are frightened for their lives, that's the only way you can get all these people to do this conspiracy thing. Well, if you say something, they'll kill you. How come they haven't killed you? You're a nobody. You're telling me they're ready to kill Neil Armstrong if Armstrong decides that he's going to let up that this thing never happened, and Armstrong is living in fear of this to the degree where I can't tell anybody, they'll kill me. Okay. So the bravest guy in the world, the most unemotional guy, the guy who's most likely to take a risk of dying and understands all of this, is too terrified to speak out because NASA will kill him. But here you are, revealing all of this secret information. And why are you still alive? I think it's just a deal ender. I think it's a deal ending argument. I mean, where do you go from there if you're one of these guys? Where do you go? Oh, well, I mean, if you're talking about an agency that's ready to kill people, hundreds of thousands of them, to protect the secret, then why on earth are you walking around telling everybody about this stuff? Why aren't you dead? In fact, not only why aren't you dead, but why aren't you dead? Your movie disappeared, erased from YouTube, all of this stuff. You're saying we have the power to do that, so how come you get to be the hero? I don't know how you argue back from that. If anybody can think of a way, I'd be grateful if somebody wants to pitch into the comment section what their response to that would be. But anyway, so like I said, 98% of the people now that say that the moon landing never happened say it and believe it because they've only heard the one side of the story and they never heard anything else. The people who make these claims, like Owen Benjamin, you're never going to convince him. That's his mental illness. And I'm sorry to have to put it so plainly, Owen, but it's mental illness. And when there's that kind of evidence, that kind of overwhelming evidence, then the inability to admit you're wrong is a sign of some kind of deep emotional issue. I'm willing to say, look, and I think we begin the debate by this. We say, hey, let's just all make an agreement. I'm perfectly happy to make this agreement. If you make a compelling case, I will change my mind. You make a compelling case that it never happened and come up with points that are insurmountable, then, okay, I'll change my mind. But see, the thing, too, is that they're... They look at hundreds of thousands of photographs, and out of hundreds of thousands of photographs, they can find 3 or 4 that they find something that's a little odd. but they never actually tell you what happened. And so that's why if I ever debated one of these guys, I would just say, first of all, I believe in the Apollo 11 moon landing and the entire space program as written. I'm convinced it occurred. That's why I'm here to argue. But before we start, instead of telling me what my problems with this particular picture is, you tell me what happened. Tell me what actually happened. Because you can attack anything, but if you don't have a position to defend, if you're not offering statistics that can be responded to, then you can attack anything. Steve Darrow says, attacking me with these supposed facts is a sign of aggression, which proves that you're trying to bully me. And that to which I would reply, well, that may or may not be true, but the fact that you've already moved off of the topic of whether the moon landing ever happened or not, and it got onto the topic of whether I'm too mean to you or not, is an indication that you lost the argument. So anyway, it's just my attitude about it has gotten more mature. I'm not nearly as angry about it as I used to be. And certainly if I was doing that debate with somebody and history was, on my shoulders, I would be as nice as I could possibly be. Steve Darrow says, yeah, but you're just a racist. And my response to that would be 5,000 hours of me talking without a script on the internet. And they turn up one interview with somebody else talking about a book called The Bell Curve. That's the total evidence you have. When I'm on record 20 times saying that Booker T. Washington proved that black students had higher test scores and so on than white students. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because the minute you try to make the argument about me is the minute that you admit you lose. Well, you're a racist, we shouldn't listen to you. I've been thinking about all this. I've been thinking about this for like the last several days, especially the last 24 hours. And I think if somebody said, well, you're just a racist, so, we don't have to listen to you. I think what I would say is I would turn that around on them and say, all right, let me ask you a question. Did slavery happen in America? Now, if I told you it didn't happen, you'd say I was nuts. But what if Barack Obama said that slavery never happened? And what if Kamala Harris said it? And what if Al Sharpton said that slavery never happened? If Barack Obama stood up in front of the American people and said that slavery never happened, would that mean that it never happened because he's credible? Or are there things that are true regardless of who delivers the message? Yeah, it's like Steve Darrow. I don't know what Ted Cruz said. What Steve Darrow says, look at Ted Cruz's Twitter feed for today and see how well using facts and logic works on the leftists. See, this is the point, folks. I'm not going to be using facts and logic. I'm not going to be using facts and logic at all. I'm going to be using pictures. I'm going to be using pictures, and I'm going to be using do-it-yourself experiments. And that's why I'm going to win. Because I'm going to use their tactics against them. I remember I was in a mini version of this with like 5-6 people. I was debating a guy about UFOs, and he was showing me these, I forget what he called them. These like these bug-like things that are flying through the air, and you do a freeze frame, and it's got this kind of fuselage and landing legs and stuff coming out of it. And it's like, what is this? These are alien spaceships. It's like, all right, you're showing them to me at 1 frame a second. Can you play the video in real time? Okay. And it's a bug flying through the air on a digital camera, rods. It's a bug flying through the air. And when you grab any single frame of it, that little bit of motion that the bug makes while the frame is being recorded looks like this kind of thing. And when you play the footage, what you see is a bug flying through the camera. There's a picture. There's like one of the 9/11 conspiracy photos is a picture taken from underneath one of the two planes. I guess it was the second one. and they say there's a targeting pod. You can clearly see in this still frame that there's this targeting pod underneath this 767. And what I want to say is, can I see the frame before and after this? Because if it's a targeting pod, if we go back 10 frames, we'll see the targeting pod. If we go forward 10 frames, we'll see the targeting pod. I want to see a frame other than this one, because I maintain that this is a reflection off at the bottom of the aluminum of the airplane, and that a digital camera has created this artifact. I'm not saying you put it there, I'm just saying this is how it was recorded. So I'd like to see the frames before or after, unless you're telling me that the targeting pod appeared on the jet for a 30th of a second, in which case, I guess you win again. I wouldn't normally do this, but this is extremely important. Just give me one moment. Sorry. Very sorry. It's about this, about the program here. And I don't want to miss anything here. I hate, like I said, if it's no dead air, it's not the Stratosphere Lounge. Okay, yeah, if this wasn't time sensitive, I wouldn't have sent it, but there it is. So anyway, you know, and you can do this with everything, but you gotta use the kind of stuff that takes the wind out of people. You gotta show them that railway car going, and you gotta show it 3 or 4 different times from different experiments, and then people begin to understand the power of air pressure. If you can explain air pressure all you want to, and you can say a vacuum cannot be maintained on the surface, blah, 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 and it just bounces off of them. But when you see it happen, it's bloody impressive. It just scares the living daylights out of you. So anyway, that's that. Alrighty then. After that brief hour-long opening remarks, let's take some questions. Why don't we? Actually, I'm going to go to Facebook here for a bit.